when the great heroes of our people, the writer, the poet, the survivor, the philosopher, Elie Wiesel would tell this story. The story of the Baal Shem Tov, the great founder of the Hasidic movement, that Elie Wiesel would add a brief coda to at its close. The story is that when the Baal Shem Tov, the great Rabbi Yisrael ben Eliezer V'Sara, saw misfortune threatening the Jewish people, it was his custom to go into a certain part of the forest and to meditate. And in that part of the forest where he meditated, he would light a fire and say a special prayer, and the miracle would be accomplished. The misfortune would be averted. Later, when his illustrious disciple, the Maggid of Mezrich, Dov Ber, would have a similar occasion for the very same reason, to intercede in heaven, he would go to the same place in the forest and say, Master of the universe, listen, I do not know how to light the fire, but I'm still able to say the prayer. And again, the miracle would be accomplished. Still later, even, when the great Rav Moshe Leib of Sasov, in order to save his people once more, would go into the forest and say, I do not know how to light the fire. I don't even know how to say the prayer, but I know the place. I hope that that is sufficient, and it was, and the miracle was accomplished for him too. And when that heavy task fell upon Rabbi Yisrael Vergin, he would sit in his armchair, his head would be in his hands, and he would say to God, I'm unable to light the fire. I don't know the prayer, and I can't even find the place in the forest. All I can do, God, is tell this story. I hope it's enough. And the miracle would happen. It was sufficient. And then Elie Wiesel added, God made human beings because God loves stories. There are all kinds of stories in the world. Billions and billions of stories. The great Rav Nachman of Breslev, the great grandson of the Baal Shem Tov, said, you know, in the world they tell stories to put children to sleep, and he said, I want to tell stories that will wake people up. I want to wake people up, he said. And so the story that we told last year, that song that we began with, that thread that brings us back to where we were in some forest last year in the backyard of my home in New Paltz. We didn't light the fire, but we certainly said the prayers, and something happened, and it stayed with us. The story that we wove was a story of oz, of strength. We told a story last year of the great Rebbe of the Warsaw Ghetto, we call him Kalman Shapira, who spoke to his disciples in the Warsaw Ghetto and said to them, if you believe that God is a God who both creates the world and also there is destruction, but the world was created after destruction, believe that there will be life again, he said to his disciples, and it gave us strength last year. And if anything this year, as I thought, what is it that we need? What is it that I need? What is it that needs to be awakened in me? What is it that's working through us? What's working around us? It's the theme of trust and the story of trust. And so, to tell the story of trust, we need to first back up a little bit and tell the story of what we're doing here tonight and what we're doing for the next 10 days, and how remarkable it is. How remarkable a story before the story of trust is here. There's an even deeper story. It's a story that maybe is perhaps the core story of our people, the secret sauce to our longevity. It's an insight into profoundly what I think separates this story from any other story, and that is the story of tshuva, of change. The story that is the core, essential story that we tell over and over again every single year. The story of teshuvah, the story of returning, of repairing, of fixing is a simple story. It's a story that begins with the notion that we are not trapped in circles of inevitability. It's a story that says that just because last moment was last moment does not necessarily mean that next moment will be the same. It's at the heart of every impulse to entrepreneurship. It's at the heart of every impulse to renewal. It's at the heart of every story of redemption. It's at the heart of every story of human evolution and growth. It's a story that is essentially the story of hope, and tshuva is the essence of our people's gift to that conversation. And so we don't know how to light the fire. Maybe some of you here tonight don't know the prayers. Maybe tomorrow, wherever you are in Europe or Mexico City or around the corner, this book that is open before me might be closed before you. But the core story, whether you know the prayers or not, whether you know how to get here or you didn't get the Zoom link or not, the core story that we come to back over and over and over again is the story that says patterns were made to be broken. That you can trust in, that you can rest in, that you can settle into. That's the first story. The second story, I guess, is this. Im tachane alai machane lo yira libi. Im takum alai milchama bezot ani boteach. These two verses, this verse 3 of Psalm 27, is the High Holidays psalm. It's a psalm that carries us through, that we're going to be with throughout the next 10 days. This psalm, Psalm 27, begins, LeDavid Adonai Orivi Ishi, God is my light and my salvation. From whom do I have to be afraid? And then it arrives here at this moment. Im tachane alai machane. If, right, a gang surrounds me, my heart is not weakened. If a battle is joined around me, my trust in you, God, is firm. And what's remarkable about this beautiful verse is that the phrase bezot ani boteach, in this I trust, my trust in you, the word bezot, it really doesn't have a referent in the psalm. We discussed this for a number of weeks. We thought, what is the psalmist saying when he says bezot, in this that my heart will not be afraid, in this that you are with me, but God's not mentioned in the beginning of the psalm. And so it leaves open the possibility that trust, boteach, that which I trust in, is really tshuva, the possibility of fixing, the possibility of rising up, the possibility of making a change, the possibility of the potential that the story that we tell might change for us in the coming year. And also, that we live in so many ways in an ocean of trust. Some of you might have come in tonight or come into this season thinking, you know what, trust is exactly the thing that I don't have. I'm not even sure if I can trust being here right now. It could be that trust is the very thing that you don't want awakened. How many people here feel that way? Maybe the second narrative is not only that tshuva is possible, that change is possible, I can trust in tshuva, but maybe we can begin this evening with what the clinical psychologist Roderick Kramer wrote is something called presumptive trust. Presumptive trust is that even if you focus on one particular thing that you think you're lacking in trust, you're still swimming in an ocean right now of things that you are dependent upon. And so just for a moment, inviting you to close your eyes for a second and to make a little trust list as we begin. If you're someone who doesn't meditate or for whom meditation means going to sleep, I invite you to sit up in your chair. And we're just going to notice this, zot, this. Trust that breath is coming in and leaving the body. Trust in so many things in this moment that you and I and all of us here trust in. What is it in this moment that you can trust, that you can rest in, that you can rely upon, that you can ground yourself in, that you can surrender to? Noticing, is it the body at this moment that you can trust to breathe? Is it the mind that you can trust to hear and to make sense of? If you'd like to open your eyes, I invite you to take a look around the room. We're going to take a look at the Zoom. Bezot ani boteach, in this I trust. I trust in tshuva. I trust in this process of 10 days of reflection and introspection. I trust that stories can change and that the story of stories changing is itself the greatest story. And I trust in all of you. I trust in this kihila, in this community together. I trust. Whether you know each other or not, we sit where our ancestors sat. I trust. Bezot ani boteach. I trust. I trust.